Hello everybody, it's Keith. Help support the Northeast scene and declare yourself a member today. Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts or your podcast medium of choice. Rate us and leave a review. Every little bit helps. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. It has every podcast episode plus other exclusive content. Like and leave a comment. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at TheNEScene. Also, continue to write us at northeastscene@gmail.com. We want to share your experiences as well. And now, here's the show.
You know, you want a prediction about the weather. You're asking the wrong Phil. I'll give you a winter prediction. It's going to be cold, it's going to be gray, and it's going to last you for the rest of your life.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Northeast Scene Podcast. This is Keith.
And Tommy.
And we're back. The show must go on. You ever hear that showbiz slogan, Tommy? The show must go on?
I have heard that.
Yeah. I feel it now. I live it. Because every week, no matter what, we have to deliver the goods.
It's a fucking grind, man. But we get it done.
That's right. We deliver the finest quality podcast entertainment week after week, and this week is no exception. Joining us tonight on the show, Matt Fox of Shai Hulud and Zombie Apocalypse. This is going to be exciting. You know, Shai Hulud is one of the first hardcore bands I got into.
Yeah, same here. They were the first band that I heard that I was like, oh, this is melodic. I can kind of, like, this is equatable with, like, something that I can play in front of other people, and they go, oh, that part sounds nice.
Exactly. I always like some melody and emotion in the music, no matter what genre it is. And Shai Hulud has that. Hearts Once Nourished with Hope and Compassion was one of the first discs in the hardcore world that I had, and it holds a special place in my heart. And a lot of their music has that melodic tinge, you know, that really makes me feel something.
Yeah, the reason I knew who Shai Hulud was at first was because Vadim Taver had a Shai Hulud shirt, and I went and looked up the band.
Yes, Vadim and Mike Shaw were two very big Shai Hulud people.
Yeah. Do you know where Shai Hulud comes from?
Dune.
Yeah.
I only know that because people told me. I've never read the book. I did not see the David Lynch movie. But if they're doing that new movie, I'll see that.
Yeah, that's one of those movies I really should have seen, because I know a lot of people reference that movie, but it's like, I don't know. For some reason, I don't know if this is just me personally, but for some reason, I can't get into science fiction. Like, science fiction movies, for some reason, just kind of lose me.
A lot of them aren't good, but there are plenty that are. They're very hit or miss. And the Dune movie, I think it's kind of wacky because it's David Lynch. Like, I've seen clips of it, and it just looks kind of wacky. So that's why, and I don't like David Lynch. I know I'm going to create a lot of controversy with that statement, but I don't get it.
I have seen, I think, 3 David Lynch movies. My biggest thing I know him from is he was a character on a show. I don't know how he was involved, like, in terms of character-wise, but he was on Louis C.K. show for a little while. He was like Louis, like somebody that worked for the studio, I think, that Louis would kind of meet with every once in a while. And I remember seeing him being like, yeah, who's that old dude with really good hair? And then I found out it's David Lynch.
The one thing he has done that I do like, in around 2003, he created these wacky ringtones.
Okay.
And one of them is this robotic voice just saying over and over again, I like to kill deer. I don't have it handy right now, but I'm going to drop it in when I edit.
I like to kill deer.
I know that movie, Blue Velvet, and the only reason I saw it was because it was referenced so many other times in other things. You know, like the Dennis Hopper character constantly has that mask that he puts on his face and inhales deeply with. I think he has like what's that? Like laughing gas.
Yeah, whatever that is. Yeah.
I've seen that one. My brother-in-law turned me on to Eraserhead when I was a kid. I saw that, but I don't think I watched the whole movie all the way through. It was too like weird and like I didn't understand what was happening.
Yeah.
And I started that movie, Mulholland Drive, and I never finished it.
Yeah. It's just not for me. I don't click with it, and that's okay because there are plenty of other people out there who love it. And let's see what's going on. Oh, Saturday. This past Saturday was Memorial Day weekend. Tommy, I got the first vaccine dose.
Yes, you sent me pictures.
Yeah, it's weird. It was like Javits Center in Manhattan, gigantic convention center. It was all empty, and you go in and the military is there, and I went in and sat down and got the dose, and I didn't even feel the needle. You know, I was like, is this whole thing a sham? You know, did I get a placebo dose? Like, what's going on? You know, all the paranoia kicked in. And then later that night, my arm hurt so bad.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I got a real dose. Did you get that too?
I didn't get it with the first dose. I got it with the second dose I had a lot of pain, not only in the injection site, like right around my shoulder.
Yeah.
It went all the way down to pretty much my elbow. It was just like, I couldn't lift my arm above like 45 degrees without really, really bad pain.
I woke up at like 4 a.m. and grabbed an ice pack and just held it there for half an hour. It was bad. And it was very emotional too, as many things are these days for me. I was in the convention center and I got the dose, and I just got really sad because, like, I don't know, you know, just when this whole thing started, things were a lot different, and just thinking about like how everything has changed and almost that this thing is coming to an end. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I'm thinking about the beginning of pandemic when I'm watching a 13-hour Final Fantasy VII gameplay movie and just trying to make it day to day and get through, and now it's like it's almost over. Like, things are almost going back to normal, and I just got very emotional. And it didn't help that they make you go sit in an observation area for 15 minutes.
Yep.
It's this big, giant area with all these seats, and I'm sitting there, and there's a 4-piece orchestral band to my left, and they start playing Bittersweet Symphony.
What a
of
surreal
all fucking songs.
Yeah, what a surreal thing to happen.
Yeah, so just imagine me sitting there and like that's playing, and I'm like, oh, like.
I think there's a cool story behind that song too. I think they got sued by the Rolling Stones for it. I don't think they make any money from that song. I think they have to pay all the royalties to the Rolling Stones.
That band got really shafted because of that, and I think some other things. It's such a good song, though.
It is a great song. I vividly can remember the video.
I was just going to say that. It's one of the most classic videos of all time.
Yeah, that's a great one because it's just that single dolly shot the whole time, like that steady cam, like backing up, and you're just watching that guy go through, you know, Midtown. Well, I don't know where he is, but like just walking through crowded streets. That's a really, really cool idea for it. And it also, for like that type of era of videos, it was something new and interesting, and I'd never seen anything like it before. And that's why, you know, 25 years later, I can still remember it.
Yeah. And he's like bumping into people and shit. It's funny. And I came up with an idea for one of my bands. I was really high, of course. And I was like, I never told anyone the idea though. I wanted to do like a happy version of that video.
Okay.
Like we're walking down the sidewalk, and like we pull out sparklers and light them, and then I run into a store and like run out with a cake that has candles on it that are lit, and just like, you know, like a bunch of silly happy stuff. It's actually kind of a stupid idea now that I think about it. That's what some time and sobriety will do to you.
I was going to say the things I thought of when I was under the influence or with other people that were, and were like, that's such a great idea. And then like a week later you think of it and you're like, oh, what a half-baked piece of shit that was. I'm so fucking glad we didn't do anything with that. What a dumb idea.
Yeah, I used to get high and record all these guitar riffs, and I would go back and listen to them, and I was like, this is all garbage. Like, this is all really bad.
I sent you a whole thing. Remember, I sent you all my old digital 4-track.
Yeah.
That whole thing is just chock full of garbage. It is the worst Converge ripoff, unbelievable. Like, it's just so terrible. So terrible.
Can I confess something to you?
You've never opened it.
No.
Oh, okay.
How'd you know?
Because I in my head, as I was sending it to you, I went, he's never going to fucking use this.
I never even opened the package. You know what? I'm going to open it tonight just to take a look at it. I think you sent it to me, and then the band was done shortly after that, and I haven't really played any music since, so...
Yeah, it was pointless at that point. I just thought it was like... I used to really use it for if I had an idea of something that I wanted to record, I was able to throw it on there really quick. And the problem is that, like, I never really learned how to use it properly. So it was constantly just me playing along. I used it a lot for just practicing. Like, I'm going to play along to a click track. And I would just, and I'm like, I could have just bought a fucking $10 metronome and done the exact same thing. It was just so stupid.
I remember one time Doug and Mike from Ecstatic Vision were staying here. And Doug comes in and sees the package unopened. He's like, oh, you didn't open the package. I was like, I know what it is. I'm awful.
It's June. We got that.
Oh, fuck. Yeah, as of today, it's June. So what's up with you? How are you? Are you okay?
Let me ask you a better question. How are you?
No, Tommy. How are you?
All right, I'll make it quick, and then I will circle back to you, I promise.
And no. This is a nice continuance of the last episode. No, just everything's fine with me.
Good.
It's still up and down every day. And the only story I really have is the vaccine shot thing. And then it rained the rest of the weekend, which was great. So I didn't feel shitty sitting inside. It was pouring like the whole weekend. So I just played games and watched Twitch and hung out by myself. And that was fine. And the vaccine is really the only other things that happened. So what's going on with you?
Nothing really. Same thing. It was shitty here the whole time. Despite it being shitty, I had a wedding on Sunday.
Oh, yes. How'd that go?
Terribly.
Why?
It was so cold. It was like, I don't want to exaggerate. So when I did get in the car, I looked at the temperature in the car and it said outside temp was 51 degrees.
Ooh.
And that was at 7:45 at night.
Ooh.
If it gives you any kind of indication how the wedding went, I left the wedding at 7:45 at night.
Oh.
Yeah, I felt terrible, but honestly, it was outside. It was tented. The first part of it, though, the ceremony, there was no tent for the audience, so we just carried our umbrella. The problem was that it was this absolutely beautiful farm, but the problem was that it was this absolutely beautiful farm. Emphasis on farm. Like, it was like grass, but like there was no like actual walkways anywhere. So my feet and my wife's feet were soaked within like the first 20 minutes of us getting there. And there was no sun out. It got windy at one point for about 45 minutes. It was, let's just put it this way. It was an absolutely amazing, beautiful ceremony, wonderful people to spend time with. But my boss came up to me at around 6:30 and she leaned over and she's like, okay, so what time are we leaving? I was like, are you? And she goes, I'm wearing sandals. My feet. She goes, I haven't been able to feel my feet in like 20 minutes. Like it's getting to the point where it's painful to be outside. And I'm like, ooh. Yeah. So I wore a suit, like a 3-piece suit. So I kept my vest on and I gave Kelly my jacket. Kelly had a shawl with her, like, cause she had, like a regular, like kind of summertime dress, but, really smart. Kelly wore thick leggings because her dress was like floor length, so you couldn't see them. So she wore really thick leggings under. So she did really well, like temperature wise, except for her feet were freezing. And it was like, after a certain amount of time, it's just like, how much longer am I going to put up with this? So we waited till the vast majority of people, like especially a lot of the people that were invited were older, like elderly relatives, like people that were like 60, 70, 80. So they started to leave around 6:30. So I lasted till about 7:30, 7:45. I remember we got in the car and it said 7:47. So
Did you drink at all?
oh no. I drove. And I drove my potential new car.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I've
So-
seen pictures of this, folks. Tell the people, Tommy, what you're thinking of getting.
So it is a Subaru Forester. It's actually my stepdad's, and he wants to buy a new car because he's tired of this one. It has really low miles on it, so I'm thinking of actually purchasing that one from him rather than going through buying a new car or a used car at a car lot, because as I've been looking, car prices are they're high and rising. I constantly think about ways that I can save money.
See, this is the equivalent of you like buying a car on eBay.
Oh yeah. This is a 1-to-1 transaction, and then that way I'm saving the sales tax and the tags and title and all that stuff that has to get done. I'm just not paying for it.
Honestly, I'm teasing, but if you like the car, it's a good way to go because dealerships are a scam, and I don't know. It's just so expensive, and you don't know what you're getting into, and all that stuff.
Exactly, and when people, that's like the old common line with used cars is like, oh, she just drove it to church on Sunday and to the supermarket, and it's like, I literally know where this car was driven to. It was driven to my mom's doctor's appointments and my house. That's it. Like that's where the extent of where this car has gone.
We are going to be standing by to see if you purchase this car from your stepfather. But right now, we are going to talk to Matt Fox. Enjoy. All right, folks, we're here now with Matt Fox. Matt, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me here.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you. And, Tommy and I were talking in the first segment, and Shai Hulud is one of the first hardcore bands that we both got into. And we're going to get into that a little bit later. But first, let's get to know each other a little bit. Matt, we talked earlier when we were setting up. You said you live in Hynella, New Jersey, yes?
That is correct.
How long have you lived in the Northeast now?
Oh, geez. Well, we moved. The band started out in South Florida, as
Right.
some people know. We moved to Poughkeepsie, New York, in the year 2000. So, yeah, I've been up here quite some time now.
So why did the band decide to move up to New York?
It was just difficult for a small fledgling hardcore band to get noticed or get shows in Florida. I mean, we played locally, of course, and we got to a point where if bigger bands came down to Florida, we got to open for them.
Right.
But, it would take like 6 or 7 hours, however long it took, just to get to Georgia. And we wanted to be accessible everywhere. So we found a central place. We actually found a drummer that lived in Poughkeepsie, and we moved there for him just so we could access Boston. We could play New York, New Jersey, Connecticut. And it really saved our band. It was one of the best choices we ever made in a history of bad choices.
Yeah, and the Northeast is where it's at. You're close to Boston, you're close to DC, Philly, New York City, and hence the name of this podcast, The Northeast Scene. Nothing beats it.
No, it was a great decision for us. It really helped kickstart the band into being more of a professional band in the early 2000s.
That's excellent. So let's talk about your upbringing a little bit. Where in Florida did you grow up?
I grew up in what's known as unincorporated Pompano.
Why is it called that?
I don't know, but I always loved that. It wasn't Pompano Beach. It wasn't Pompano Beach proper. It was unincorporated Pompano. I have no idea what that means, but I adopted it for Shai Hulud, and I just like the fact that it's unincorporated.
Right, because I've seen, your Instagram handle is Shai Hulud Unincorporated.
Correct. Yeah, I stole that from where I grew up in unincorporated Pompano.
So what was it like growing up down there? Are you close to the beach? Is it like nice and warm all the time?
Yeah, it was always, as I recall it, quite warm. I had access to, I was right near the beach, So the beaches were, I was never a big beach guy, but I started loving the beach about a week before I moved to Poughkeepsie.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, Florida's a lovely place. And South Florida isn't the typical, it's not known for being, like what they say, the Florida man.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's more North Florida. South Florida is, I don't know. As I remember it, my friends in Florida will probably laugh at me for saying this, but it's kind of like a paradise. I grew up there, and I really, really love it and miss it.
Yeah, I've been to Tampa, and I've been down in South Florida before. It was really nice. I liked it, and I was going to ask about the Florida man stuff, and if you caught any wind of that, but it sounds like that's like more of a North Florida thing.
Yeah, more South Florida is more like, because you always hear about a bunch of New Yorkers moving to South Florida. So
yeah, I always think of Florida was always like the more northern you go in Florida, the more southern it gets.
Yeah, that's typically correct.
So tell us about your musical history. How did you start playing? How did you discover that you loved music?
How did I discover that I loved music? I think it started with seeing, I don't know that I ever saw the whole movie, but seeing clips of Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park. Caught it on TV when I was really, really young. And I loved that these essentially monsters were playing music. I don't remember really loving the music until I got older. I don't even know that I really heard much of the music. I was just enamored that there were monsters and beasts playing guitars and drums. So I think it started, which probably accounts for why I ended up loving Gwar 30 years later. I would say it started with Kiss. And as I've said in a million other podcasts before, I was always attracted to the heaviest, angriest music that I could find. And when I was like 7 years old or maybe even younger, I bought, I believe it was Journey Frontiers. And I loved Journey. Journey was different than Michael Jackson. It was guitar driven, for lack of a better term, a little heavier. I've always been drawn to the heaviest music that I could find. I've told this story a million times, but one time a friend of mine and I were shopping for music, and we were really young, probably under 10 or maybe about 10. And his mother said, okay, you can both pick out one tape each, cassettes. We were buying cassettes at that point. So we went and picked out what we wanted, and we came back and we compared what we had. And he had Michael Jackson Thriller, and I looked at that tape and I thought to myself, why the hell would anyone buy that? You could hear these songs on the radio all the time. And he looked at my choice just as quizzically, and I had Wasp: The Last Command, which made perfect sense to me, but made no sense to him. And likewise, his choice made no sense to me. So for some reason, no reason that I could really identify, I was always attracted to what was less popular. Like I said, Wasp instead of Michael Jackson. And from there, it went to Quiet Riot, Twisted Sister. And then when Motley Crue put out Shout at the Devil, that became my all-time favorite thing. And in 1986, everything changed, and I found home when somebody played Master of Puppets for me. And that was,
yes.
Yeah, that's when that I heard the album right around the time it came out. And a friend of mine at this local clubhouse we used to hang out at played the second side of Master of Puppets for me first. So the first Metallica song that I remember hearing was Disposable Heroes. And again, as I've stated in other podcasts, I simply, at that age, had never heard music like that. I didn't know guitars could do that. I didn't know there were vocals that were that heavy and angry. And I never looked back from there. I'm sitting right now at my desk in front of a Master of Puppets flag. So not much has changed.
That's excellent. Yeah, I was going to ask if you were a big metal guy, because going back and listening to the Shai Hulud discography and even Zombie Apocalypse Now and listening to your guitar playing style, it's very metal. I almost think of like the Swedish metal bands and all that kind of stuff, and it jumps back and forth from the traditional metal sound to like the really heart-wrenching melodic stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say I'm a metal player. And I love to hear that. I am not a strong metal player at all. My friend Eric, who sings in Zombie Apocalypse, he's one of the two singers, but he also writes half the music with me. He can't believe that I don't have a strong down pick. You know, the way James Hetfield can just, I can't do that. I learned guitar, really, my main influence on guitar was Dr. No and the Bad Brains. And I have more of a fluid, strummy guitar style. And when I do crunches, I tend to alternate instead of going down. My hand just doesn't do that naturally. But yeah, I owe whatever style I have to Dr. No and Bad Brains. I would love to be a stronger metal player, but truth be told, I'm not going to be joining Metallica or Megadeth anytime soon.
So do you play more rhythm-oriented stuff?
Absolutely. In Shai Hulud, I do some of, I've recorded most of Shai Hulud's material, so I do a lot of the leads as well. But right now, Shai Hulud has another guitar player, my good friend named Mark, and he's a lot stronger of a player than I am. So whenever I go to practice a lead and I'm struggling with it, I say, Mark, you do this. You're better. And he takes over because he's a strong lead player. But I'm much more suited for rhythms.
Yeah, it sounds like we're on the same page there. I can put together the skeleton of a song pretty easily. I'm bad at writing bridges for whatever reason. I always need help there. But I can put a verse and a chorus down easy, and I can do simple leads, nice leads, but nothing too Metallica-like.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't even know where to begin. I've had some friends try to teach me, and I truth be told, I just never had any interest in shredding.
Right.
One of my earliest memories of wanting to play guitar, I started out as a drummer, by the way. Yeah, I started out playing drums, and when I moved to guitar, I remember the first thing that I wanted to do on guitar was write a love song for someone I was in love with. as a drummer, I remember thinking, what am I going to do? Like play a thrash beat for her?
Check out this Tom Phil.
Yeah, exactly. One of the main reasons I wanted to play guitar initially was to be able to write love songs.
I mean, that's a good reason.
No, it's a great reason. It's sweet. It's very sweet.
So when did you pick up guitar, and did you end up writing the love song?
I kind of did write the love song. I'll get to that in a second. When did I start picking up the guitar? Well, my friend Joe Geert, who some listeners may recognize the name, he was the guitar player and writer for the band from South Florida called Tension. Joe and I were in the thrash band before all the hardcore stuff. This is when we were about 13. We were called Unwillful Demise. And he wrote all the songs back then, and he was trying to figure out a solo for one of the songs we had. And we were young, so he wanted me to play a power chord. I'd never touched a guitar before, and he's the one who taught me how to play guitar. He said, put one finger here and one finger there, and strum these two strings. That's called a power chord. And I learned how to do everything else pretty much from there. So yeah, I would say that I picked up the guitar for the first time when I was about 13, and I borrowed another friend's guitar, and I would just pluck away on that. And a few years passed. Next thing you know, I can play guitar somewhat competently.
So the love song.
The love song. Well, she's married now, so I don't know if I should really tell it, but I will. In 1999, I was dating a lovely lady she's married now, like I said, but she's still one of my best friends. And I remember we ended up doing a split on Trustkill with another victim called A Whole New Level of Sickness.
Yes.
Right around that time, I remember that I was trying to write lyrics for the song Set Your Body Ablaze, which I knew was going to be called Set Your Body Ablaze, but I had absolutely no idea what the lyrics were going to be about, aside from setting yourself on fire. I just like the title. So I remember sitting down trying to write the lyrics, and absolutely nothing came out. I remember I called my then girlfriend and I said, I have you, if my band ends, I have you to blame because I'm happy. I have nothing mean or angry to write about. So that was the joke. But then right after that, maybe after that conversation could have been, or the next day, who knows, I picked up my guitar and in one night I wrote the music that turned out to be the song off our second album, That Within Blood Ill Tempered, called Given Flight by Demon's Wings. And that song was written out of having a lot of love in my heart for this girl that I was dating. So if I ever wrote a love song, musically only, because the lyrics have nothing to do with being happy, quite
Right.
the opposite, actually. But musically, if I ever wrote a love song, it would be Given Flight by Demon's Wings for the girl that I was dating in 1999.
Wow. That's see, that gives it new context. I'm going to have to go back and listen to it. I love that.
Yeah, it's one of we've always been known, I think, for having some pretty and melodic stuff. But that song, if you listen to it, there's nothing aside from the vocals and some of the lyrics. There's really nothing angry about it musically. So it's kind of interesting that that's how it came about.
Shai Hulud, I think, is a pretty unique band. Like back when I'm talking the first 3-song EP and Hearts Once Nourished, there wasn't a lot of stuff like that out there. There wasn't a lot like that happening in heavy music. The only other band I can think of is Strong Arm.
Yeah,
and
who we ripped off completely.
Okay, see, I was going to ask if they were an influence.
Oh, absolutely. Josh, the guitar player, the main writer of Strong Arm, and the reason I just told the story the other day, the reason that there is a Strong Arm and a Shai Hulud instead of one band featuring both of us is we played in a hardcore punk band back when I was 18 and he was, I think, 14. And that band was called Planet X. And we wrote songs about science fiction and like just goofy characters that we made up. We were young kids, of course. So we had a lot of fun playing in that band. But one day, Josh said to me, hey, I need to be in a ministry-based band. I have to minister to people and, let them know of my faith. And I said, oh, wow. I don't have that kind of faith, and it wouldn't be comfortable at all for me to play in what's known as a Christian band. And from right there, we always stayed great friends. Of course, I even have a Strong Arm poster hanging on my wall still. But Josh and we parted ways. I started another punk band. He started a hardcore band called Endure, and then from the ashes of Endure came Strong Arm, and likewise from the ashes of my punk band, and I ended up playing in a ska punk band too. But from the ashes of those bands came Shai Hulud, and Strong Arm came first, and Josh really came into his own as a songwriter. So both their records, Atonement and Advent of a Miracle, were and still are huge influences on me. In fact, if I'm ever stuck if I ever have writer's block musically, I put on Advent of a Miracle, and I always get some inspiration from it, still to this day.
Yeah, that album, Advent of a Miracle is the only one I've heard, and that was another early hardcore favorite of mine. But if you go back and listen to it now, which I still do sometimes, it still sounds very fresh.
Yeah, I completely agree.
What were some of your guys' influences? Like, what gave birth to that sound that both of you guys were doing in your respective bands?
Well, I can't really speak for Josh. In fact, a lot of the times, I'm still in touch with the guys. I was talking to Strong Arms, who was also our drummer back in the day. I was talking to him about this the other day. I said, I don't know where Josh got the inspiration to write some of the heavy stuff that he wrote, because Josh was always more like a classic rock guy, and then he got into hardcore punk around the same time that I did. But where that heaviness came from, I'll never know. As far as speaking for myself, I was influenced. The first, I grew up listening to Metallica, as I already stated, and Metallica is extremely melodic. They have some beautiful stuff. So I'm sure that was, ingrained in me somewhere. But the first band that I heard where I actually, maybe because I was a little older, but where I actually noted, wow, this is like aggressive music, but the guitars are pretty. That was a band called Jodie Foster's Army, commonly known as JFA. Yeah. And when I first heard JFA, I fell in love. In fact, I have a lot of stuff hanging on my wall. I've got their album Untitled framed on vinyl hanging on the wall, because that album was a huge revelation for me. It was the first time that I realized you could be aggressive and the guitar could be, for lack of a better term, pretty or melodic. And that's where I would say a lot of that initial, the beginning of my writing style came a lot from JFA. I would hope that's as they were such an influence. But, there were some other melodic hardcore bands and hardcore bands that were doing things that were slightly out of the box. I mean, I loved Youth Crew Hardcore. I loved Youth Today and Uniform Choice and Chain of Strength. But when I heard Burn, I really fell in love because they were so different, and the guitar was not only melodic, but really unique. Also a band from New Jersey, where I live now, Turning Point, was when I heard Turning Point, that became a huge influence on me, particularly the last thing that they recorded, which I think was a split. Who else? JFA, Turning Point. For some of the progressive elements, a lot of that came from Strong Arm. A lot of that came from Strong Arm's drummer, who I just mentioned, a guy named Steve, still one of my great friends. In fact, just to side note a little bit, I always say that my life was changed musically twice, like completely turned on its ear twice. The first time was obviously Metallica, because I just didn't know that music could be like that. And the second time was Steve Kleisath. When he joined Shai Hulud, he taught me that the drums could also be a creative instrument. I always thought the beats were just inherent in whatever riffs you write. But I remember him telling me, yeah, I'm just going to play what sounds natural right now, but over the next couple of days, I'll rewrite the song on drums. And I thought, what does he mean, rewrite the song? The drums are, the drums are going to be what they are.
Right.
But he came back in a couple of days, and he had these unique fills, and he without changing the structure of the song, he changed the song, and my eyes were opened, a door opened that I didn't even know existed. So I'd have to put, as far as some of the off time stuff that Shai Hulud does, I credit that to Steve. I really learned a lot of that, if not all of that, from him. But I'm neglecting some of my metal influences. Testament was a huge one for me. Of course, Slayer. And for some more, also some of the odd time stuff and melodic stuff would be later Voivod. I don't know if you guys ever listened to Voivod.
No, I've heard the name so many times. I went from alternative music straight into metallic hardcore. I totally
Okay.
bypassed metal. Tommy is very into all the metal though.
Yeah, I grew up liking metal first, and I was kind of one of those kids that, like yourself, Matt, I heard Metallica for the first time, and I went, I've never heard anything like this. And again, it was that aggressiveness, and it also mixed. Metal coincided with my sister got married. My brother-in-law introduced me to punk rock, and he was a big, not youth crew guy. He was more along the lines like Dead Kennedys, JFA, Government Issue, a lot of the Discord stuff. So I got into a lot of that, but also with him, he was great because he was just into music in general. So he turned me on to things like high back chairs, Fugazi, like stuff that wasn't necessarily just punk rock. And I think my thing was, as I got older, I could appreciate those things, but my personal interest beyond like hardcore was always in metal. I've always loved like the original, like kind of Norwegian black metal stuff. I'm a huge, like when somebody says this band plays really fast, I'm like, I can take it or leave it. Like sometimes it's interesting to see or hear someone play that quickly. Like these guys play at 300 BPM. Okay, cool. Let me hear it. All right, that's enough. I don't want to hear that anymore. But what really gripped me with metal was when I heard, and I don't know how you say the name of the band, Necrophagist.
That's as close as I would get it.
Yeah, and I heard them and I went, this is incredible, because it was kind of like what Shai Hulud did, which was it was the heaviness and the brutality that I loved with like heavy music, but it also took this really cool melodic sound, but melodic that you hadn't, like, a lot of these Lydian scales or things that had a very kind of like Arabic kind of style. So you're like, wow, this is fucking off the wall. Like, and, to see someone play like that, I think his name's Muhammad, that plays guitar, and he does everything basically. Right. I was just kind of floored by that. And I was like, I'm really interested in just technique. Now I stink at guitar, but I love watching people play, and I love the kind of watching people say, okay, so this is the technique you use when you do, sweeping arpeggios. Like that was like one of the things like my friends in college we used to joke about all the time was they had never really heard metal before. And at that time, I was working at the college radio station. So I just had this gigantic library of CDs I could go through. And like yourself, I picked out things that looked odd. Like when I saw something, I was like, this looks like it's kind of like metal. I'm going to listen to this. And I picked up Yngwie Malmsteen. And there was a running joke with all of my friends in college. We would watch this Yngwie Malmsteen video where he was, doing instructional, and it wasn't instructional at all. It was literally him just being like, okay, so then you play this arpeggiated minor, and then and it was like, oh shit, he's just. But the running joke was he was wearing so much jewelry in the like while he was filming, you could hear the jewelry clinking around. It wasn't the string sound. It wasn't his fingers on the string. Like it was literally it was his dangly bracelets making all this extra noise. It was like, Jesus, this guy like wearing this huge like pirate shirt that was like open, like 4 buttons down. It was hilarious.
Of course.
So that's one thing I was going to mention with Shai Hulud. I almost think of it as a signature Shai Hulud thing. There'll be like an off-timey breakdown with a melodic lead over it. So I guess that came from a lot of the metal influence and your drummer.
Yeah, Steve was a huge influence. Another band that I should mention, when I heard In Flames for the first time, I was blown away by the beauty of a lot of their melody, particularly on the albums Jester Race and Horacle. The first song on Horacle to this day still gives me chills. Beautiful stuff. And I always thought somewhere deep down, which probably came from JFA and Strong Arm mostly, But when I hear, I mean, I love an aggressive, heavy riff like everybody does. And somebody screaming over that is obviously powerful. So, keeping things low and mean is something that I always try to incorporate in Shai Hulud. But I think one of the most emotional sounds that I've ever heard is pretty music with somebody just blood curdling scream on top of it. A blood curdling scream on top of melodic music is just extremely emotional. And I can't speak for any other bands, but what I try to do when writing songs is create emotion. I very, very rarely, if ever, have I ever tried to make people mosh. I don't care. People might say, "Oh, but Shai Hulud has a couple sick mosh riffs." Maybe we do, but I can tell you that was never the goal. The goal was always to make somebody feel and make the hair stand on end.
Yeah, it's hard to mosh to a Shai Hulud mosh part. I'm thinking of those breakdowns, and it's not like 4/4 or like groovy. It's just kind of like, wait, it's here, it's there.
We got a couple. This first song on Hearts Once Nourished and Set Your Body Ablaze at the end is a strong 4/4. But so I'm coming clean right now. My goal was never to make anybody mosh. Sing along and get your hairs on the back of your neck to stand up. That was always more of my main goal. And like I said, the best way to do that is just one of the ways to do it is to have pretty music and somebody just screaming his or her guts out on top of it. Very powerful to me.
Yeah, and I also think about it in kind of a ethereal way that like the emotion you put into it is the emotion that people will feel when they listen to it.
I sure hope so.
I also think like when I get really like when I was a little kid, I remember listening to like classic rock radio. And I remember hearing, that break in Blue Oyster Cult, Don't Fear the Reaper, and they harmonize it. I remember hearing that the first time going, oh, how are they doing that? That is the coolest noise I've ever heard. Like that was incredible to me because it was like, it wasn't a singular guitar, but they were doing something. I'm like, oh, how did they do that? And then I heard the same thing again with like Metallica when they would do it. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is something I can learn and something I can hone. Like, this is cool.
Yeah. The funny thing about that is, like I said, maybe it was just because I was too young when I was listening to Metallica, but I didn't, even though harmonies are a huge part of the band and, the classic records, I didn't pick up on that. I only picked up on harmonies and got the idea to do harmonies in my own music was when I got into In Flames. And people might think, that's really late for someone to get into that, especially someone coming from Metallica, and Iron Maiden has always been a favorite.
Oh yeah.
But, it never really dawned on me that that's what they were doing. It was only when I heard In Flames that we started incorporating some harmonies that way.
So tell us about, we're young, Shai Hulud is together, we're performing, and South Florida was a huge area for hardcore. You have Morning Again, Strong Arm, Shai Hulud, a lot of other bands I can't remember. How was it back then? How was it playing shows and going to shows and all that?
Well, it was a really close-knit scene. Everybody was friends. Everybody, people revolved from band to band. Everybody was just finding what worked for them. So it was just a huge pool of musicians to choose from in the hardcore and metal scene. And like I said, it was extremely close-knit. Some of those South Florida days are, incredible. We would have shows with local bands that would do just as well, if not better, than when a national band came down. Because our scene was, I'd like to think anyway, it felt strong to me. It was really strong. And, I used to get excited to see local bands instead of just, the nationals. And you know how a lot of scenes always say, come out and support your local scene. Don't just come out for the big bands. I don't think we ever had that problem. Not that I can recall, at least not in my era, because the local bands were, little mini rock stars of our own. When Shai Hulud started, there was, of course, Strong Arm, who I was in love with, but there was another band from Miami that was really popular called Brethren. I absolutely loved Brethren, would go to see them. A band called Out of Spite from Miami. A lot of bands were like important to us, and they weren't national. One of my favorite bands from South Florida, who I always looked up to, even though we sound nothing like them, is a punk band, a melodic punk band called Quit. Have you guys ever heard of Quit by chance?
No.
Oh man, it was like South Florida's own Descendants. They were absolutely fantastic. I don't want to talk your ear off because probably most of the people listening to this wouldn't have heard of Quit, but if anybody can go online and track down the album Earlier Thoughts by Quit, you'll hear, pop punk before pop punk was even a term. Yeah, and it's one of my all-time favorite bands. And that's when Quit was around, was a few years before Shai Hulud even started, even before we thought of starting. But bands like Quit and Load from South Florida, these are from my era growing up. We also had a couple metal bands that were awesome. We had a band from Florida called Raped Ape, a metal band that we loved. They actually changed their name, and they were one of the first bands that Century Media ever signed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they changed their name to Pain God. I think you could probably find them on Spotify, but that was from the ashes of a band called Raped Ape. So South Florida always had a really, really strong metal and hardcore scene. And I'm, for lack of a better term, blessed to have been a part of it and, been born of it and accepted by it with my myriad of bands. Like I said, we started out with Unwillful Demise and had my silly punk band for a while, a ska punk band called Bingo Mutt. All these bands were really got to do a lot of really cool things just by being in South Florida, without ever even thinking of going out of state, because the scene was big enough to accommodate all of us.
Yeah, it was the same way in our scene in suburban Philadelphia, Bucks County. We didn't know any national bands. I didn't go to see any national bands. I had only been to one big concert before I discovered hardcore. And if one of our friends was putting on a show, everybody was there. Everybody played all different kinds of bands. It was really a special time.
Yeah, I agree. It was a special time for us, too. I hope I'm not romanticizing it because in my head and in my heart, that's how I feel about the South Florida scene. But I think that's pretty accurate.
I would say you're not romanticizing it because when I think of, how like alternative people think Seattle. When I think of big eras of hardcore, I think of Florida because you had Shai Hulud, Strong Arm, Morning Again. That was like the earlier era. And then you had the second era, which was like Poison the Well and Evergreen Terrace and all those bands.
And Evergreen Terrace was a lot more north than us. But,
so they were part of the Florida man scene.
They might have been considered that. I think they were from Jacksonville, if I remember correctly, but I could be wrong there. Yeah, South Florida though, man, what a time. What a very important time. And that's why I still on shirts or on records, I still reference our old area codes. 305 and 954 are still, that's in Shai Hulud's blood. So I don't think Shai Hulud would sound the way we do if we were, I might have the same influences, but I think there was something about South Florida where I really don't think we would sound the same if we were from Kansas or somewhere. I don't know.
Matt, did you get into, I know that was like big in like the late 80s, kind of early 90s was like the Florida death metal scene, kind of like Death and Morbid Angel,
sure,
Deicide, Obituary. Did that have any kind of influence on you as well?
Death did, because I got into Death when they were still, at least to my knowledge, they were still known as a thrash band. I got into Death on their first record, Scream Bloody Gore, and loved that. And when Leprosy came out, which is my favorite of Death's discography, I'm actually looking at a Death Leprosy mouse pad that I have hanging on the wall next to me. Yeah, so I was big into Death, but by the time that I heard Morbid Angel or Deicide or any of these other Florida death metal bands, I was knee deep into hardcore and punk. So I had to go back and get into some of the death metal that I missed. Death metal still to this day is not one of my favorite genres of metal. There's some bands I love. You know, I love Napalm Death. I love Vader from Poland. I love Opeth, which I guess could be considered death metal at one point. But yeah, for me, my metal is like straight thrash and heavy metal. And then I got into, like I said, some of the heavier stuff with Death. But I remember the first album that I ever heard that was classified as death metal, and that was Deicide's first album. My friend who I mentioned from Tension, Joe Keat, he had bought, I don't even know what Deicide's first album is called. I think it's just self-titled. But he bought it on vinyl, and I remember I was at his house and he played it for me, and I hated it. I absolutely hated it. But like with a lot of people, when I don't know what it is about hardcore and punk, but there's definitely something elitist about it. Once you finally get in, you know, and you learn at that time, you know, you're learning about Dead Kennedys and GBH and Sick of It All. Once you get into that scene, everything else is like poser shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I don't know what it is. It's like, I remember that. Like my own friends, I was accepted into that community by some people and I was getting into the music. And some of my own friends were like checking me, like, oh, you listen to this now? Oh, you just listen to the CDs he listens to? And I was like, what the fuck? Like, aren't we friends?
You got to pass the purity test, Keith.
That's the word I was looking for, purity test. Yeah, I was like,
the purity test. Yeah, believe me, I had to pass a few of those myself. But that's the funny thing about hardcore and punk. Once you get into it, you start giving the purity tests.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I gave Deicide the purity test, and it failed. It failed miserably. Now at 48, you know, I could go back, and I do like Deicide now, but I couldn't have been any less interested when I was like neck deep into hardcore and punk.
Yeah, we talk about this on the show all the time. Like, there are bands I didn't listen to for decades because I was just like, no, I don't listen to that. Or there was albums I didn't listen to because I'm like, no, I don't listen to them anymore. Just so many years of, I don't know, just deciding that I'm not into something. And now that I'm older, I can just go back and listen to whatever and not think like, oh, this isn't cool, or, oh, I don't want someone to know I listen to this, or whatever other meaningless stuff you do when you're younger.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. I remember Shai Hulud got to open in South Florida when we still lived there. We got to open for Entombed. If you would have told a 48-year-old me that we get to open for Entombed, you know, I would be thrilled, and I would buy T-shirts, and I'd be up front. Well, probably not up front, but you know, I'd be very engaged in the show. When we opened for Entombed way back when, couldn't care less. Never heard of them. didn't know anything about them. They were touring on the album To Ride, Shoot Straight, and Speak the Truth, I think. An album that I love now.
Yeah.
But back then it was who are you playing with this Saturday? Some metal band, Entombed.
Yeah.
Jeez.
You know? Yeah. So they didn't even pass the purity test. And they're more hardcore than I am. You know? So yeah, it was an interesting thing getting into hardcore punk, the elitist attitude that you adopt.
Yeah, you know what's really funny is this is kind of a connection, Matt, that I have with you. A kid that went to my high school that I was friendly with, and I went to an all boys private school. Nice. He played in Shai Hulud for about 3 years. His name was Matt Canning.
Oh, sure. Yeah, of
Yeah.
course.
So Matt was one of the dudes that I knew from high school that was like a metalhead. Like when I saw he was in the school band, but I remember he was like, "Oh, I'm bringing my guitar to school," and he brought his guitar in. I remember he had that, and do you remember that people used to have those stickers on their computer that would say like Intel inside, and it was like he had a sticker on his guitar that said Evil inside, and I remember being like, "Oh, this kid's like a metalhead. I'm not going to hang out with him." And he ended up being like one of the nicest, smartest, kindest people. I was like, this dude's a fucking, and he's like one of these people now. He's real into like Brazilian jiu-jitsu. He, for a period of time, you ever see those like pancakes that people make that look like art? Pretty sure he was like doing that like really well. Like I remember him posting something. He's written like 3 or 4 books. Like this kid's like a fucking super prolific. And I'm like, I dismissed it because like, oh, he's a fucking metalhead. I'm not gonna listen to him. And it's like, then I go to see Shai Hulud. I'm like, Matt, like to see him I'm like, holy shit, like that's fucking nuts. You're in this band.
That's funny. Yeah, but I know what you mean about when you meet somebody, especially when you're younger, you meet somebody that's more metal than you. I remember when I was asked to go to a party, like a real metal party, and I was so terrified because I really thought that I had visions of them like sitting in a darkened closet, ripping apart chickens and stuff. I'm not joking. Like I really thought that happened. And I was so terrified to go to this party because they were more metal than I was. And God only knows what they were into.
Yeah, I thought that kind of stuff too, if I saw someone like really into Slayer. But Matt, let me ask you about Shai Hulud. Now, as legend had it back in the day before the internet really took off, Chad joined the band. Was he singing along at a show or something and you guys heard he had a good voice, so you got him into the band because you needed a singer?
That's somewhat true, but he got into our little group because if I understand it correctly, he went to the same church as some of the guys in Strong Arm.
Mm-hmm.
And I was hanging out with the Strong Arm guys. I think Shai Hulud was in its earliest stages with Damien Moyle from Culture and As Friends Rust on vocals.
Yes.
So when I met Chad, I think he was 14 he could have even been 13 because he joined the band when he was 15. So let's say around there, 13, 14.
How old were the rest of you?
We were about 20. I was 23 when Chad was 15. So yeah, 20, 21, 22 when I first met him. Depending on when I met him, I really can't remember. I think he was probably 14. But yeah, he was just this young kid that would hang out with Strong Arm. And the funny thing about Chad, a lot of people will love this, is that, he loved hardcore and he loved metal. But boy, was he into pop punk before it was really, a term. Because he would always, I played in, like I had mentioned briefly, I played drums in a ska punk band for a couple of years called Bingo Mud. And we put out a 7-inch that he really liked. So he said, "Oh, I love that you like, punk rock too. Do you like Green Day?" I'd say, "No." "Do you like Blink-182? No." Because that stuff was always just a little too cutesy for me.
Yeah.
But, with what Chad ended up doing with Newfound Glory, I can't even blame him because from the very beginning, in addition to loving Metallica and Sick of It All and Gorilla Biscuits and Youth of Today, he was right there with Green Day and Blink-182 and whatever other bands were doing that sound back then. So it made Newfound Glory to some people doesn't make sense because he came from Shai Hulud straight to Newfound Glory, but he always had those roots. But he was hanging out with the Strong Arm guys and incidentally me because I was just with the Strong Arm guys. I don't remember where we first heard him. I think it might have been at one of our shows with Tension, the band that I mentioned earlier, and I think he was singing along with them. And Damien said to me, "Hey, if it doesn't work out with me, you should get that guy from that sang along with Tension, Little Chad." So yeah, essentially that's how it happened. I remember he was going to join the band, but I wanted to hear him recorded first. And he was on Tension. I think he was on Tension's album. He was on somebody's album. And somebody said, yeah, so this is, little Chad, what he sounds like. And I remember thinking right then and there, yeah, this is definitely the guy.
Yeah. So he's a little younger than you guys. How do the band dynamics work out? Did you have a lot of lyrical input, and would you have to show him stuff? How does that work?
Yeah. Well, when Damien was in the band, you want to talk about prolific. Damien is also a very prolific writer and a brilliant writer and an effortless writer. So when he was in Shai Hulud, he wrote all the lyrics. Mm-hmm. So after he left, I knew it was somebody had to take up the mantle. So I just did. Our bass player wrote lyrics. Even Steve, our drummer, wrote some here and there. But Chad was 15, so we didn't. I mean, now he's 40 and I'm 48, so it doesn't even seem like that big of a difference. But 23 and 15 we felt like there was an eternity between us, so we didn't task Chad with writing any of the lyrics. Although Chad did come up, we were in our warehouse and we were playing the song, what became the song For the World. Originally, it was called Sauve qui peut. Well, it's a French term. I don't know what it means. But yeah, Damien wrote the original lyrics, and he originally wrote I Hate You. And I remember Chad screamed sorry, did I say I hate you? He originally wrote I Love You. And Chad screamed into the mic, I hate you. And we said, oh, we should keep that. So Chad is responsible for I Love You becoming I Hate You, which is ironic to say the least. But yeah, so I wrote most of the lyrics mostly because no one else was doing it. Our bass player wrote a couple songs off our first album. He wrote the songs Beliefs and Obsessions and Eating Bullets of Acceptance. And then the rest of the lyrics were written by me and whatever was left over by Damien. So Chad didn't have the burden of writing lyrics, but like you said for a second there, we would just show him what to do. And he was always creative, extremely creative, as we now know with, writing all the music or most of the music for Newfound Glory. But he would come in with lyric placements here and there. I remember one time we were having trouble figuring out how to start the song Profound Hatred of Man. And he said, why don't you just start it as soon as it comes in? So the way that song comes in was because of Chad. That was his idea. So he was involved, but I think was probably just a little too young to start writing lyrics for, a band of guys that were in their 20s.
Yeah, and I like hearing that everyone's working together and contributing, because I don't know, I guess it's my own ego too, because I would always be like, no, I want to write this, or I could be difficult, or I could be in difficult situations where everyone wants to do their own thing, or if I'm trying to force my own thing in, but it sounds like everyone's working together. And Chad being so young and being able to have ideas like that and do the stuff he's doing vocally is pretty incredible too.
Yeah, well, like I've said a million times, Chad sounded more like a man at 15 than I do at 48. And that was the thing that we were worried about when we were going to record our the 3-song EP, Profound Hatred of Man. We'd already done a few shows with him, and we knew he sounded great. But I just remember thinking, how is this guy? Is he going to sound like a kid on record? But to this day, in 2021, he still sounds beefy and like a man.
Big time. My scream still sounds more high pitched. His is like this bellowing guttural thing.
Yeah, we used to call him a mini dead guy.
That's good. So yeah, I got into hardcore around 98, 99, and a lot of my friends were Shai Hulud fanatics, just super fans, and I got into the band, the first 3-song EP, and of course, Hearts Once Nourished with Hope and Compassion, absolute classics. And I remember seeing you guys around that time too, and this was back when the internet was kind of new, and people would put their email addresses in the insert. And if someone had an @AOL email address, I would like randomly instant message them and being like, "Hey, are you in the band?" And they'd be like, "Yeah." And I'd be like, "Cool. Remember me at the show?" They'd be like, "No, there was a couple hundred people there."
We put our AOL addresses in one of our records. And here's something funny. We did it for that reason. We wanted people to contact us. We wanted to talk. It was fun. That was the burgeoning internet, when everyone was on AOL Instant Messenger. That was a great time.
Big time. And yeah, I remember seeing the band for the first time. Yeah, Middlesex County College. And the show was with Cave In and Hatebreed and a bunch of other bands.
Yeah, classic show. Great show.
Oh, God. Yeah. And I think there's video of it on YouTube, too. And I think the Indecision split was coming out or had just come out. And boy, it was like a mind-blowing experience to see you guys for the first time. That might have been the first time I actually sang along at a show, too, because...
Oh, nice.
It was like scary to get involved in shows in Philly because there was so much violence and craziness at the time. But I don't know. I guess it seemed safer at the Middlesex show. And there was a bunch of people like piled on stage with the band singing along. And it was just a great time.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite shows we ever played. That was, and that's one of Chad's last shows. And I think that might have been, after we parted ways with our original bass player, we had another guy named Matt Fletcher. Matt Fletcher originally joined on guitar, and I think that was his first show that he ever played with us at Middlesex, with our original bass player still on bass and Matt Fletcher on guitar. So yeah, that was kind of like a cornerstone show for us. I remember the crowd being crazy that night.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I still remember that one. It was great. And now I remember when word got out that Chad was going to be leaving the band to focus on Newfound Glory. And we were really into Shai Hulud. And I remember my friend was like, "Oh, we're going to make anti-Newfound Glory shirts and wear them to the Shai Hulud show." And I even when back then I was like 17, and even at that age, I remember thinking like, "Oh, that sounds a bit extreme."
Yeah.
So when Chad left, was it weird? Was there like any tension?
I would say ultimately we were cool. I mean, we had a European tour coming up. One of the reasons that Chad left initially was because of Newfound Glory. They just got signed to Drive Through. And, we all, not just Chad and those in Newfound Glory hoping, we all saw a future for Newfound Glory. It was pretty clear. So that was one of the reasons, but also in Europe, if I remember correctly, back in 1999, there was an issue in Kosovo, and, he didn't want to fly over to Europe. He was terrified. So I think a combination of Newfound Glory, being his band, where he was writing, he could write whatever he wanted musically or lyrically. Whereas in Shai Hulud, he really had to submit stuff. You know what I'm saying? Because we were older. And Newfound Glory were his friends from his high school. It was his band. So I think in tandem with not wanting to go to Europe in 1999 is what caused him to quit. So it put us in a little bit of a position because we really went over to Europe with no singer. And as legend, if you want to call it that, kind of has it, we met Geert, well, I guess technically our third singer, over when we played in Holland. So, but there was no, like I said, because it was so clear that Newfound Glory was onto something, there was no real tension. Even after Chad had quit, we recorded the music for the Another Victim split, and in that session, we also did our song for the Bad Brains comp. If you guys know, I think it's called "Never Give In," Bad Brains tribute that came out in around 99, 2000. So we recorded the music for that. And I remember asking him, because we didn't have a singer yet. I said, "Hey, well, I know you're not in the band, but would you do this for us? Because otherwise were going to be printed on the packaging, but not on the CD. So he agreed to do it, So yeah, I think that we always remained friends, and it was basic. By the time they got famous, we'd already expected it. I remember I was like, I'd be working out in the gym and looking at the TV, and Chad's showing his crib on MTV.
It reminds me of Circa Survive was that band in our area. Like just everyone that was in it and kind of the vibe and everything that was coming together. I think we all kind of knew it was going to be something special, and it sounds like Newfound Glory had that going on down in Florida.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, they had like their shows were always really well attended. They always did really well down in South Florida. Yeah, and like I said, I'm pretty sure we all knew these guys. I mean, at least for me, it was a sense of dread because I was like, we're gonna lose. I know we're gonna lose Chad to this band. And I remember having that feeling for a long time before they got it, where they got. So yeah, we all saw it coming.
So how do you hook up with Geert?
Geert, we went over to Europe really without a singer. We had this one guy that was supposed to sing, but he came with us and ended up being a roadie. His voice, I don't remember if it was he didn't know the songs or his voice wasn't what we were looking for. So Matt Fletcher, who was our guitar player at that time, our second guitar player, he said, you know what, just let's go with one guitar and I'll sing. Yeah. And okay, let's try it. But we got over there and we were getting complaints to our booking agent saying, is this the Shai Hulud that put out the release Profound Hatred of Man? Because it doesn't sound like them. This is not what I expected. So we were not doing well at all. But I think it was our second or third show that we played in Holland. And I remember I was talking to a very pretty girl who seemed interested in me. So I was very happy about that. And this little kid, he seemed little, he's a small guy, kept coming over to me and, talking my ear off about stuff. And I always want to be nice. I'm always nice to people, I think, unless they're smoking. Then I tend to get a little standoffish. But I'm allergic to cigarette smoke. So if somebody comes up to me and they're smoking, I'm like a wreck. But anyway, he wasn't smoking. But I was talking to a nice lady. So, but he just wouldn't go away. Eventually, the lady went away. And, Geert started telling me how he loved the music. He loved the lyrics. The Indecision split had already come out for a couple of years. Like, that's my favorite thing that you guys did. And it was really refreshing meeting him because he was such a big fan. So we played the show and didn't think about anything. And then I believe the next night we played somewhere in Germany. And all of us, this is in 1999. I had never been to Europe before. I did not know anybody in Germany, or in Europe for that matter. So we get to the show and somebody says, "Is Matt Fox here?" And yeah, that's me. Why? Well, you have a phone call. I have a phone call in Germany. Okay. For all I know, maybe I was hoping it was the girl, but no, I really had no idea who it was whatsoever. And I picked up the phone and it was Geert. He goes, "Hi, Matt, this is Geert from yesterday's show." "Oh, hi, how are you doing?" And he just he said, "Hey, I'd like to meet up with you guys at a couple of shows and maybe come on tour with you." And I was kind of taken aback by it because I didn't, wow, he wants to go on tour with us. And I made a joke. I said, "Yeah, maybe you could even try singing," because we knew it wasn't going that well with Fletcher. Though Fletcher, was doing his best.
Right.
But yeah, so he ended up coming on tour with us. I think he watched us at one show, didn't sing that night. And the next night I said, "Yeah, why don't you try and scream, see what happens?" And I remember when he let loose his first test scream in the mic, everybody in the band that wasn't him all looked at each other with those eyes like, well, holy shit.
Wow.
Yeah. And we knew. And not only that, he knew most of the songs already. And all of a sudden, Shai Hulud came together in Europe, and we ended up having a pretty decent tour, really thanks to Geert. Shortly after he joined the band, he moved to Florida and joined the band.
That's an incredible story. That's like the hardcore kid dream. Like, even I'm 40 years old and I still dream like, oh, I'm going to go to the show and the singer's not going to show up and I'm going to have to step up and take care of business.
Yeah, that's what he did. And he sounded great. And, we ended up recording. We already had the music for Set Your Body Ablaze, Linoleum, and the Bad Religion cover, Anastasia, all recorded. So when he moved to Florida, and we promptly got we got to work on the lyrics that I couldn't write because I was too happy before. We wrote Set Your Body Ablaze together with Fletcher, the three of us, really. And yeah, the rest happened. That Within Blood All Tempered came a few years later.
Yeah, that's incredible. And
yeah,
so how does it, I'm curious about a mechanics question here. There's been a lot of different touring members and different members in and out of the band over the years.
True.
How does it work when someone new is coming in? Like, do you just tell them, hey, just know it when you show up? Or do you help them learn stuff? I'm always curious about how that works.
When it comes to guitar, I teach everybody.
Okay.
That's come in. And it's gotten to the point, right now our singer is Jay Pepito, who plays bass in the band and used to sing for the band Reign Supreme. And he messaged me about a year or so ago and just said, it's time. So I knew, okay, he wants to get Shai Hulud going again, because we had changed so many members. We had so many changes in such a short amount of time that I was spent. And I really thought that Shai Hulud was over, because I just did not have the energy to teach people songs anymore. It was over for me. So that's how we ended up, coming back into the fold. But yeah, when it comes to teaching people or guitar players, I would teach them. When drummers would audition, you just tell them, you give them like 3 songs to learn, and hope that when you practice with them, they have the 3 songs, which is what happened with our current drummer. He's been with us for like 5 years now. He's done our last few tours. His name is Mo Watson, awesome drummer out of northern New Jersey. Yeah, we told him just, hey, take these 3 songs and let's see if you can get it. And I remember we went to practice with him and he just nailed it. As far as, the only people that I really teach would be the guitar players. Over some of the time, I'd have to go over the lyrics with the singer, because we have a lot of lyrics. So, we have a lot of lyrics, which is something that I've changed. I don't write that much. I don't write as many lyrics these days, because I learned how much of a hell it is for a singer. I being a guitar player and not the singer, I always wanted vocals over every part of the song, not realizing that our singer is also a human being and needs to breathe. But I've learned this now. So when I write lyrics, I say, okay, well, we'll let the music shine here and let the singer, grab some water or something. But with singers, I would sometimes have to go over the rhythms, because some of the rhythms, I mean, I don't necessarily think so, but I've been told that some of the vocal rhythms can be a little tricky here and there.
Big time.
Yeah.
And here's a question. How did you find the drive to keep going with member changes and having to show people? Because the last band I was in 2017, 18, and it was the first band that I was ever like at the center of, writing most of the music and trying to find the members and trying to hold it together, and I don't know, trying to teach people parts. And I burn out really quick. Like, I just couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't find the right people. I couldn't find people who would learn the parts. the people who could learn the parts quick moved on to other things, and I just got crushed. I couldn't handle the rejection anymore. How did you find the willpower to keep it together and keep touring and keep recording?
I didn't. It beat me. It crushed me too. I couldn't do it anymore. Right now, as it stands right now, Shai Hulud hasn't played a show in over 5 years. Our last show was on tour in Japan. And that's the time that I was talking about. We went through so many different guitar players and different singers, and it wasn't working out. Either we weren't getting along, or somebody only wanted to do it for money and thought there was going to be more money than there was. You know, we've had that problem a lot. People, think, oh my God, I'm joining Shai Hulud. These guys, they've been around forever. They must make tons of money. No, we don't. And there's not usually a lot of money to go around, but, it crushed me. So as far as how I got the drive, like I said, Jay just about a year or so ago texted me, "It's time," which, basically meant, all right, let's stop fucking around and let's start putting this back together. And we're having our first practice this month, with Jay. We've practiced with him before because he filled in for us for we had a singer back then, but our singer at that time couldn't make these shows. And I happened to be working out with Jay. He was training me at the time, which, if you know me, is really hilarious. But I remember asking him if he would just do these 2 shows for us. And I think that's when the idea popped in both of our heads. Hey, this actually worked. I thought maybe in the future we could ask him again. I guess he thought the same thing. But just to reiterate, I didn't have the energy to move on. For a while I did. I did it for a good 10 years, but back in the day, we had Matt Fletcher, who was our bass player, but used to play guitar. So he would show new guitar players some of the basic songs, and I would show them some of the newer, at that time, like more That Within Blood Ill Tempered songs, which is why Fletcher moved from guitar to bass, because our songs got a little more techie and he was more comfortable playing bass. But, for like the classic Hearts Once Nourished songs, I had him, and he would show those basic songs to a new guitar player, which took a lot of load off me, and I took the load off him by showing them the newer stuff. But once Fletcher ended up going back to school and moving back to Oklahoma, it was all on me, and it took a few short years before I was finally burnt out. Even thinking about it right now, we've had a guitar player for, that I've been working with. Well, he was on tour with us about 7 years ago anyway. But then he couldn't stay in the band, and he just rejoined not that long ago. But we're playing a song that we haven't played in about 10, 12 years. And I have to show him that sometime this week. And I'm still dreading it. Like the fact of going back and relearning the song myself and teaching it to somebody else. I'm still burnt. I'm still burnt from it. So I'm thankful that the guitar player we have, he's got such a great memory. He remembered all the songs that he learned from 7 years ago. So
wow, Jesus,
yeah, he's incredible. He really is an incredible player. Like I said earlier, I give him the tough leads if I can't do them as well as I used to, because he's just a better player all around.
So during this long hiatus for Shai Hulud, is that when you started up Zombie Apocalypse?
That's when we restarted Zombie Apocalypse. It's kind of the same story with Jay. Jay's not in Zombie Apocalypse, but Eric, one of the 2 singers who writes the songs with me, he just started, I don't even know how long ago it was. Maybe, God, it's so long ago at this point. Maybe about 5 years ago, he started sending me just stuff that he was writing. And I don't know if it was him or if it was me, but one of us said, yeah, that would be good if Zombie Apocalypse ever got back together. This would be a good riff to base a release on. And with that, whoever said it, Eric just started sending me more and more riffs. And I said, that's great. That's definitely would be awesome for Zombie. And that's how it was resurrected, just by Eric sending me random riffs that he was writing, because he's a great guitar player in his own right. Eric, on a side note, he's been in Shai Hulud before. He sang for us around 2005. He's been one of my best friends for over a decade, but he's now playing bass for Shai Hulud. So he's always been in the pool. On another interview not too long ago, we were talking about that. Like, Shai Hulud has a pool of people that are in the band. It doesn't work out for whatever reason, but we stay friends. And now that Shai Hulud is touring in a very limited capacity, that allows my friend Mark and my friend Eric to rejoin the band, because now we're not trying to tour for 6-7 months out of a year.
Right.
Now it's going to be a few shows a year, so it becomes easier. But yeah, that's how Zombie was resurrected, by Eric just writing really cool riffs for himself and sending him to his friend, me, and either him or me, again, I don't remember which, just saying, hey, that would be great for Zombie. And, just a couple of years ago, we put out our last EP. Not last, but our latest EP.
Life Without Pain is a fucking fantasy, is the record. And I implore everybody to check it out. I was listening to it recently. It's a nice counterpart to Shai Hulud. It's like more straight ahead thrashy, but still a lot of the intricate metal guitar in there.
Yeah.
Very good, very good stuff.
Yeah, I love Zombie Apocalypse. In some ways, I love Zombie more than I love Hulud, only because there are songs that I have nothing to do with, musically or lyrically. So it's more exciting for me, because it's not like looking at myself in the mirror. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you just have to play it.
Yeah, I have to play it. I learn it just like, I have to teach everybody else. And it's just great because it doesn't all come from my brain and my heart. Sometimes if you had to be forced to listen to your own brain and your own heart, it's like, Jesus Christ, give me anything else but that. So sometimes listening to Shai Hulud, if I have to relearn something, is like looking at myself in the mirror in a brightly lit room, where you just see all your own flaws. Terrible.
Yeah, I haven't been in that situation, but I imagine it would be pretty crazy. If I don't even know if I know how to play any of my band's old songs,
Yeah.
But like, if I had to sit there and relearn them all, I'd be like, oh man, I'm back in 2004 or 2008 and things are really bad.
Sure.
How do you look back on the legacy of Shai Hulud and just everything you've done musically and all the touring? Is it mostly good times, or, how do you look back on it all?
That's a great question. I recognize that Shai Hulud made some sort of an impact, not as much of an impact as other bands, but more of an impact than I ever thought possible. So the fact that we exceeded our own expectations is pretty incredible. And ultimately, I'm proud of all the stuff we've done, even though sometimes it depends on what mood I'm in. But sometimes I go back and I listen to something and I go, people like this? It's really not that great. But it depends on my mood. Sometimes I listen back and I say, this is all right. This doesn't stink. Good for you.
I do the same thing. I'll listen to my last record and sometimes I'll be like, this is so good. And other times I'll be like, oh, I fucking suck, man. Yeah, it's just like, It depends. But yeah, I think as we get older, when you're young, everybody wants to be, or let me keep it on myself. When I was young, it's like, I want to be in a band that's really big. I really want everyone to like us. I want everything to be the best. But as I've gotten older, I can just appreciate everything that I've done and be glad that I did it.
Yeah, and that's where I'm at. Like I said, I guess one of the best things that you could possibly do, like I mentioned, is exceeding your own expectations. And yes. I never thought that Hulud would write and record an album, much less tour, much less play Australia and have, hundreds of kids with their hands in the air singing along to our lyrics that were written in South Florida with, while I was sitting in my underwear eating peanut butter out of a jar with a spoon. you know? So, yeah, we exceeded our expectations. And that makes me proud. And the fact that the band has had an impact, I mean, its impact is lessened over time, of course, because now bands that were inspired by us inspired other bands that inspired other bands that inspired other bands that are now the biggest bands in the world. And those bands don't, you know, they don't go back to the generations where their influences got their influences. So, you know, but there was a time where, like, probably in the early 2000s, where I'd go into a record store. I wouldn't necessarily see our record, but I'd see like a new band and it would say for fans of Shai Hulud. And I would just think, cool. You know,
that's going to be an amazing feeling.
Yeah, it was cool for when it lasted, while it lasted. But yeah, there was that time for us. Again, I believe that time has passed, but who knows? You know, we're working on new material, and you know, I hope to be back in the game. Definitely not to the extent that we were in our youth, but just to be back in the game and to be thought of as a regularly touring band, even though the touring will be very sporadic and not 7-month world tours like we used to do.
So let's talk about what's coming up, Matt. What do we want to plug? What can we announce? Give it to us.
Well, Hulud has really nothing to plug release-wise. Like I said, I'm hesitant to say it because I don't know when it's going to be done. Shai Hulud is not my priority these days, whereas it used to be. But we are working on a release. What that release will be, where it can be found, what's going to be on it, all remains to be seen. But we are working on something, so there's got to be someone out there that that's good news too. Otherwise, Shai Hulud has a show coming up. We're playing Furnace Fest in September. Everybody listening, I'm sure, knows about Furnace Fest. It's a big throwback to the past.
Oh, yeah. I'll be there.
Oh, you'll be there. Great.
Yes.
Make sure you come introduce yourself. Just don't smoke when you come near me.
No, I gave that up.
Okay, good. But yeah, so Furnace Fest is coming up, and we have a show with From Autumn to Ashes in Brooklyn in December. So Hulud-wise, that's what's coming up. Not much. Next year, we've got some plans, but they're still being worked out. And hopefully people will be able to see us around. But like I said, by next year, we should be thought of as a band that is active, which will be nice for, you know, the change that has been the past 5 years.
Well, that's excellent. And I look forward to seeing you at Furnace Fest. And Matt, I want to thank you for coming on the show. You know, getting into hardcore music and hardcore shows changed my entire life. It gave me all of my best friends. It gave me the music I love to this day. It gave me ideals and ideas outside of the small suburban town that I grew up in that I still hold dear to today. And Shai Hulud was one of the first bands that carried me into that scene. And
awesome.
You know, you've written a lot of excellent music over the years that I love, that Tommy loves, that a lot of people love. Yeah. And I just really want to thank you for writing that music and for taking the time to speak to us today.
Hey, my pleasure. I'm always thrilled that somebody wants to talk to me. So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
I feel the same way.
Go back and listen to Given Flight so you can hear the love song. Hey, guys, thanks so much for having me. I really, really appreciate it.
Not a problem, Matt. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure, really.
There you have it, folks. Matt Fox. Excellent discussion. We talked about a lot of really good things. There were some great stories in there. I loved the story about how he met Geert and how they hooked up on tour. And that moment when he said, you know, he let out that scream and everyone just looked at each other like, oh my God, this is the guy. That's so rare. That's so cool. And just, you know, Shai Hulud I think Shai Hulud is a very important band in the late 90s, early 2000s melodic metalcore scene. And as we told him, Tommy, one of the first hardcore bands we got into, and he was just really nice to talk to.
Yeah, and I think he kind of hit the nail on the head where it's like they've influenced bands that have influenced bands that have influenced bands that are now like the popular bands.
Yeah.
Like they're like fourth generation of that type of thing. But you know what's something I have to admit, and I have to do some listening. I don't really know Strong Arm very well.
Oh, really?
No. I never. I've heard of them a lot, and I knew. I thought they were like one of the Tooth and Nail bands, or maybe Solid State. I don't remember where they were. Like they were kind of positioned with those bands, and I just never got into them. I never gave them the chance, honestly.
Check them out after this. Advent of a Miracle.
That's the one you guys mentioned yesterday. I actually looked it up because I as soon as I was done yesterday, when we were done recording yesterday, I went to go do like exercise real fast, and I was like, I have like 20 minutes. I was like, let me put something on. So I was like, you know what? We just talked to the dude from Shai Hulud. I listened to Shai Hulud. It's just as good as I remember it when I was younger. Like
yes,
it holds up.
It really does. You know this song, A Profound Hatred of Man?
Yes.
This is what I do. I was just editing the episode, right? And what I do when I'm editing the episode, I'll take breaks and listen to the band we're talking to and all the songs that we talk about. Mm-hmm. And that ending of Profound Hatred of Man, where he says, "This world will pass away, and my emotions with it. Why should I sign for acceptance and peace of mind?" And there's that melodic breakdown. That breaks my heart, man.
Yeah.
That's such a good part.
That is a great part.
And Tommy, I was also listening to Strong Arm just before this. So check out the album, The Advent of a Miracle, and the song, The Advent of a Miracle. That's the song I was listening to. That's always the first one I go to.
So the album is called Advent of a Miracle, and the song is called that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the song I always go to first. And you'll hear the two, Shai Hulud and Strong Arm, sound pretty similar. They're like the only two bands I know that sound like that. You know what I mean? Like back in the day.
I think that's one of those things okay, so Matt mentioned it, and it was something that I was like, yeah, I think at one point in time that was something really I looked for in music, was melodic music with someone screaming over top of it.
Yes.
And then that became extraordinarily overdone. And as soon as I heard like a melodic kind of, or like, part that was like obviously in a major key and very much kind of like, oh, this is the pretty part of the song, and someone sang and then someone screamed over top of it, I was just like, no, I don't want this anymore. That it was a passing fancy for me in terms of like my interest in that type of music, and I still hear it today with stuff, and I'm like,
sometimes I like it and sometimes I don't, if it's done well.
There was something I listened to the other day and I hadn't listened to in a very long time, and it was somebody, I don't know who put it out, but maybe it was Spiritfall, but they did the You and I discography, and
yes.
I was clicking through some of those songs. There's a song called JCM 143. Holy cow, that song is so good, and it does have that same type of like screaming, singing, melodic part, but it's like, I'm a sucker for You and I. I remember seeing them when I was younger and being like kind of blown away of like, these guys are really, really good musicians. And on top of that, they went crazy when they played. I love that. I love that like a real emotive part of it. Like where they were going nuts. Like they really were behind the music and feeling what they were playing. But
You and I were a good band. I would like to talk to one of them one day. But Tommy, guess what I watched over the long weekend?
What?
The Crime of the Century. That's the documentary about the Sacklers who created OxyContin and got the whole country addicted to opiates.
Oh, okay.
You really have to watch it, because I can't believe how awful our country is, where they would allow this to happen. Like this is like a normal thing that goes on. They created the medicine. They knew what it was capable of. They paid doctors to promote it. They put people on it. They paid people to be on it. There was a woman who was on it, like on all these medications, and she got off them, and the doctor ordered her back on the medications and she died. And then I was watching it and I was like, oh no, this is going to happen again. And then I watched part 2 of the documentary and it happened again like 10 more times since then.
Jesus. I do remember hearing that. That was a few months ago. No, longer than that. Probably back March. I think that settlement is like 4 point something billion right now.
Yeah, but they generated like
I'm sure
60, 70, 80 billion in revenue. That's like a parking ticket to them.
Oh yeah. No, that as they would say, that's the cost of doing business.
Yeah. We just live in an awful country. That's the lesson that I learned from this documentary.
I don't know if we live in an awful country. I think
we do.
Well, then why are people dying to get here? Why are people actively trying to come and immigrate to our country?
Because they're nuts.
I don't think that's fact. I don't think they're crazy.
Well,
I think
listen,
they're coming
Tommy,
from somewhere arguably worse.
Tommy, all right, it may not be so good in other countries.
Yes.
But that doesn't make our country good.
Oh no, I'm not saying it's good, but I'm not saying it's by comparison it's better than some of the alternatives.
Well, why should we settle?
Oh, I'm not saying we should, but you're absolutely, here's my thing. You're 100% right in the idea that it's all manufactured. Like it's people being paid off. The right people are knowing the right things, laws being passed, and then, things being covered up, things being settled out of court, things being taken care of in a very hush-hush way. And ultimately what ends up happening is that people get payouts for loved ones who have either suffered or unfortunately most likely lost their lives for it. And the worst part is someone has to sit there and say, hey, your loved one's death is worth $492,000 or whatever, that's sickening. That's the sickening part of this.
America is not a country. It's a business.
What's it in the business of?
Fucking people over?
Again, then I would say, why are people flocking here? Why, immigration lists are like 10 years deep from some countries. Like you have to a 10-year waiting list to get here,
Well, listen, we'll figure it out one day, but that day is not today. So I don't know. I'm happy we have completed another soon-to-be classic episode of the Northeast Scene podcast. And folks, our dear listeners, we continue to encourage you to spread the word about our podcast. Recommend us to a friend if they dig music podcasts or are part of the scene and like this kind of stuff. Continue to write to us. Continue to subscribe to us. Continue to give us 5-star ratings on Apple Podcasts and write us a nice review if you dig the show because we'll read it on the air. What do you think of that?
Vadim texted me yesterday and said if Keith says another bad thing about the Beatles, he's going to change his rating from a 5 to a 4.5.
Listen, I have to stick to my word, okay? I have to stick to my word. It's all I have.
I will say this, I'm going to have a conversation with Vadim this week about Spiritualized. I don't understand that band. I don't know where to start with them. And he is like, dude, top 5 band for me. And I'm like, explain it to me. We got to talk about this. So I'm going to have a conversation.
Yeah, there's I've always heard people talk about that band. I think I downloaded 2 of their records. I think I purchased 2 of their records like a decade ago. And I never listened to them. And then I had iTunes on shuffle, so this is a while ago because I'm still using iTunes.
Yeah.
And I was really high and drunk and all this stuff one morning, and one of their songs came on shuffle, and I was like, "This is the best song I've ever heard." And there was the lyrics are something like, I scrape my breakfast off a mirror in the morning, and I was like, I can really relate to this. And but I never listened to it again, so I don't know if it's good or not.
I only know the one song because it was in that movie Vanilla Sky, and it's the really famous one, Ladies and Gentlemen, We're Floating in Space. That one.
Yes.
That's the only one I know because they use it in the sequence at I don't remember his name, but the Tom Cruise's character's funeral. And I always think it was definitely like one of those parts of the movie where you're like, oh wow, this music fits beautifully, and it's like emotional and makes you feel like the the kind of what's going on in the movie matches the music. And I texted Vadim because Vadim was like, I guess I said a line from Vanilla Sky unknowingly. Maybe I did it on purpose. I'm not sure. And he was like, what about Spiritualized? And I was like, okay, we'll talk. Look, we'll have this conversation. We'll figure it out, dude.
I'm going to listen to that song that I was talking about again and see if I still like it. So I guess that's it for this week. Do you have any final inspiring words for our dear audience, Tommy?
No. Yeah. Be kind to everyone, because you don't know what battles they fight. You don't know what they go home to or what they live at, like their lives outside of there. So be nice to everybody, or at least make an attempt at it.
I like that. That's good. All right. Oh, and special shout out to Casey Iodine of Iodine Recordings for hooking up the interview with Matt.
Yes.
You're the man, Casey. Well, that's it for this week, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. So thanks everybody for listening, and until next time.